why do we cling to someone so tightly that we lose ourselves? Why does the mere thought of losing the one we love feel like physical pain? The answer might be closer than we think, lying right next to us, wagging its tail, looking into our eyes. This text will dive deep into human emotional dependence, guided by the unconditional instinct of a dog. Because sometimes, understanding ourselves starts by observing nature. Emotional dependence is often misunderstood as merely loving someone too much. Yet, it goes far beyond affection. It's a complex psychological state where one's sense of self becomes so entwined with another person that it blurs the boundaries of identity. It's an invisible hole inside that many desperately try to fill with the constant presence, approval, or attention of someone else. Those who live in this state tend to exist on the emotional edge, caught between hope and fear, joy and anxiety. At its core, emotional dependence is about losing oneself in the other, a subtle but powerful surrender that can happen gradually or suddenly. It manifests in endless waiting for messages, overanalyzing every silence, and interpreting lack of response as rejection or abandonment. The dependent person often alters their behavior, suppressing opinions, desires, and even values in an attempt to secure the elusive approval of the loved one. This form of attachment transforms love into a burden, a source of insecurity rather than comfort. The roots of emotional dependence often reach back into childhood. The early years of life shape how we learn to love and trust. Children who experience inconsistent care, emotional neglect, or conditional love frequently develop insecure attachment patterns. These patterns embed themselves deeply in the psyche, fostering a relentless fear of being unloved or abandoned. This childhood emotional blueprint quietly colors adult relationships, causing individuals to cling tightly to others in a way that's less about love and more about survival. In adult relationships, emotional dependence can lead to a dynamic where one partner sacrifices their identity to avoid conflict or loss. This might look like constantly putting the other's needs first, avoiding confrontation, or tolerating disrespect and abuse simply to maintain the connection. This is not a sign of weakness or lack of willpower, it is fear speaking loudly. The fear of solitude, of invisibility, or of being forgotten pushes people to stay in emotionally unhealthy situations. It's an instinctual response to pain that feels unbearable. In today's digital world, emotional dependence finds new avenues to thrive and grow. Social media platforms fuel the hunger for validation with likes, comments, and shares becoming the new tokens of affection. The ephemeral approval online is mistaken for genuine emotional connection, turning digital interactions into a lifeline. For the emotionally dependent, every notification becomes a vital sign, a confirmation of worth. Without this, their inner world feels unstable, as if the very ground beneath them might crumble. This digital validation cycle often deepens the problem, as it fosters a compulsive need for external reassurance. If only I am enough, becomes a mantra repeated silently, then they will never leave me. The tragic irony is that in trying so hard to be enough, the person loses sight of their own uniqueness and autonomy. They begin to self-abandon, modifying their thoughts, silencing their true feelings, and ignoring their personal dreams just to fit into the expectations of someone else. This ongoing self-sacrifice ultimately erodes the foundation of their own emotional health. Yet, the true source of suffering in emotional dependence is not the actions or absence of the other person, it's the waiting itself. The waiting in the empty space between a message that never arrived or a gesture that was withheld. It's in that silence, that gap, where the dependent heart aches most deeply. It's a suffering born from the yearning to be completed by someone else, a yearning that blinds one to the fact that they are already whole within themselves. But the fear of being alone often overshadows this inner truth, trapping people in cycles of desperation. Emotional dependence is a paradoxical state, it simultaneously craves connection yet fears it, desires closeness yet suffocates under it. It creates a sense of insecurity that can drive people to constantly test their relationships, seeking proof that they are loved and wanted. This can lead to behaviors such as jealousy, clinginess, and overinterpretation of small cues as signs of rejection. These behaviors, while understandable, often push others away, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Healing from emotional dependence requires more than just finding a new relationship or receiving reassurance from others. It demands an inward journey to rediscover the self beneath the need. This involves confronting childhood wounds, building self-awareness, and learning to establish healthy boundaries. It means recognizing that love, while essential, should not come at the cost of personal freedom or identity. True love nourishes and supports individuality rather than consumes it. In many ways, emotional dependence is a reflection of the human need for belonging and validation, fundamental aspects of our social nature. We are wired to seek connection, and when that connection falters or feels threatened, the emotional pain can be intense, sometimes even comparable to physical pain. Neuroscience has shown that the brain does not differentiate much between social rejection and physical injury, highlighting just how deeply intertwined our emotional bonds are with our survival instincts. Understanding emotional dependence also means recognizing it as a signal, not a flaw. It tells us that the person experiencing it is struggling to feel safe, accepted, and whole. It is a call to cultivate self-love, resilience, and emotional autonomy. When these qualities are developed, the person no longer needs to rely on others to define their worth or happiness. Instead, they create relationships based on mutual respect and freedom, where love is a choice, not a necessity. This chapter opens the door to exploring how emotional dependence manifests and why it holds such power over human hearts. It lays the groundwork for the next step, discovering the animal counterpart whose instinctive love sheds light on this complex human condition. Because sometimes, the key to understanding ourselves lies not in human logic but in the pure, unfiltered devotion of another species. The forest breathed quietly in the early morning light, the crisp air filled with the faint sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Amidst the towering trees, a lone wolf moved with purposeful grace, its keen eyes scanning the horizon. There was something magnetic about this creature, a primal force shaped by millions of years of evolution, living by instinct yet capable of profound emotion. In the wolf's world, love was simple, raw, and undeniable. A force that shaped the pack's survival and bonds. Unlike humans, whose hearts often tangled in doubts and fears, the wolf's love was instinctive and immediate. It did not question its place or hesitate in its devotion. The wolf followed its mate through the dense forest, not out of need or insecurity but out of unwavering loyalty. There was no waiting for messages or craving approval, the connection was felt deeply, felt in every step and glance. This was love that didn't bind or consume but empowered. The wolf's instinctual love was rooted in survival and community, the pack was everything. Every member relied on each other not just for food or safety but for emotional warmth. When one member was wounded or lost, the whole pack grieved. When a new pup was born, the joy spread instantly through the group. This unspoken language of devotion was pure and clear, without the complexity or confusion that often troubled human hearts. Near a sun-dappled clearing, the alpha wolf paused and let out a long, mournful howl, a call that echoed through the woods, summoning the pack. One by one, the others appeared, sleek and silent, their eyes shining with trust and recognition. The alpha nuzzled each gently, reaffirming bonds without a word spoken. This ritual, passed down through generations, was a powerful expression of belonging and unity. In this moment, the wolf embodied a lesson that humans often overlook. Love does not demand constant validation or control. It thrives in trust and freedom. The wolf trusted the pack to be there, it trusted itself to belong. There was no fear of abandonment because love was a living, breathing presence, not a fragile expectation. This instinctual love was fierce yet gentle, protective yet liberating. Nearby, a human observer watched the scene unfold, heart pounding with a mixture of awe and envy. The contrast was stark. How different was this pure, instinctive love from the emotional storms humans often endured. The observer felt a stirring deep inside, a recognition of something lost or forgotten within themselves. Could they ever learn to love like the wolf, with such fearless acceptance? The observer thought back to their own relationships, the endless questioning, the anxious waits, the silent fears. How often had they sacrificed their peace, their own identity, in the desperate hope of keeping someone near? The wolf's world seemed like a mirror reflecting not just nature's truth but a path toward healing and wholeness. Yet, the observer also knew that humans carried complexities that no animal instinct could easily resolve, memories, hopes, and wounds layered over lifetimes. The journey from emotional dependence toward that kind of fearless love would not be simple or quick. It required courage, self-awareness, and above all, patience. The wolf lifted its head, catching a scent on the breeze. The pack stirred again, ready to move as one. There was an unspoken promise in their unity: no matter the trials ahead, they faced them together. This promise was the essence of their love, pure and unyielding. As the pack vanished into the forest, the observer remained, holding on to a flicker of hope. If the wolf could teach humanity to love beyond words, perhaps the human heart could find its way back from fear to freedom, from dependence to true connection. The city hummed with restless energy as the sun dipped behind towering skyscrapers, casting long shadows across the crowded streets. Inside a quiet cafe nestled on a side street, Emma sat alone by the window, watching the world blur past in a stream of colors and sounds. Her mind, however, was far from the bustle outside. It wandered through memories and emotions tangled in the delicate web of her own heart. Emma's love life had been a patchwork of hope and hesitation. Unlike the wolf's instinctive devotion, hers was riddled with doubts, questions of worthiness, timing, and trust. She had fallen in love before, but always with the echo of fear whispering in the background: fear of rejection, fear of losing herself, fear that the other might not feel the same. Love was never just a feeling, it was a battle fought in silence, a delicate balance between yearning and restraint. Across from her, the barista wiped down tables, casting curious glances Emma's way. The cafe was empty enough to allow for quiet introspection, yet public enough that Emma felt the invisible pressure of society's expectations. She cradled her coffee cup, tracing the rim with trembling fingers, lost in the conflict that pulsed beneath her calm exterior. Suddenly, the door opened, and a man stepped inside. His presence shifted the air in the room, confident yet gentle, his eyes carrying a mix of curiosity and understanding. It was Liam, someone Emma had met only briefly before but whose presence lingered like a soft melody in her mind. He approached her table with a hesitant smile. "Mind if I join you?" he asked quietly. Emma hesitated, the familiar walls of fear rising. Yet something in Liam's gaze invited trust, a promise of something different. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper, "Please." They spoke little at first, exchanging simple words that slowly wove a fragile connection. Liam shared stories of his own struggles with love, how he too had grappled with insecurities and the shadows of past heartbreaks. Emma listened, feeling the weight of her isolation lighten in the warmth of shared vulnerability. Their conversation unfolded like a dance, tentative steps toward understanding, moments of laughter breaking through the tension, and silences that spoke louder than words. Emma realized that love wasn't always the fierce, all-consuming force she feared. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, and gentle, a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. Yet, beneath this fragile hope, the shadow of doubt lingered. Would the wounds of the past allow them to truly open their hearts? Or would fear ultimately close the door once again? The uncertainty was both thrilling and terrifying, a crossroads where desire met hesitation. As the cafe lights dimmed and the evening deepened, Emma and Liam parted ways with a promise to meet again. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars, each one a story of longing, fear, and hope. Emma stepped into the night with a heart that felt both heavy and hopeful, caught between the instinct to protect herself and the yearning to be loved. In the silent spaces between fear and desire, a new story was beginning, one that might finally teach her how to love beyond the barriers of the mind and the past. The morning sun poured through the large windows of Emma's small apartment, casting golden light across the worn wooden floor. The city outside was waking up, but Emma's mind was tangled in restless thoughts. After last night's encounter with Liam, the world felt different, charged with possibility, yet shadowed by uncertainty. She sat at her desk, staring at her laptop screen, but the words refused to come. Instead, memories she'd long buried began to surface. Fragments of her past, stories she hadn't told anyone. There were secrets she had kept hidden, not just from others but from herself, locked behind walls built from fear and shame. A soft knock on the door startled her. Emma stood up, her heart pounding. It was Liam, holding 2 coffees, his eyes hopeful but cautious. "Thought you might need this," he said with a warm smile. They settled near the window, the city stretching out behind them like a vast, unknowable canvas. Liam broke the silence first. "You seem distant. Is something bothering you?" Emma hesitated, the urge to retreat warring with a growing trust she didn't expect to feel. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling, "There's something I need to tell you, something from my past that's hard to face." Liam nodded gently, his expression encouraging. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." She took a deep breath, the words coming slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She spoke of a betrayal she had endured years ago, of a love that had turned toxic and left scars she thought would never heal. The pain in her voice was raw, yet she felt a strange relief in sharing it. Liam listened quietly, never interrupting, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, he reached out, not touching, but placing his hand near hers, a silent offer of support. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he said softly. "It doesn't define you. You're stronger than you know." For the first time, Emma allowed herself to believe that her past didn't have to dictate her future. Yet, she also knew that opening up came with risks. What if this truth pushed Liam away? What if the shadows of her history were too much to bear? As the morning deepened into afternoon, their conversation shifted to hopes and fears, dreams yet unspoken. They discovered shared passions and hidden fears, weaving a fragile tapestry of connection built on honesty. Outside, the city carried on, unaware of the quiet revolution taking place in a small apartment. Emma realized that revealing her secrets wasn't just about telling a story, it was about reclaiming her power, choosing vulnerability over isolation. But the price of truth was never simple. Emma felt the weight of consequences yet to come, whispers of the past that might not stay buried forever. Would her courage be enough to face what lay ahead? The chapter closed with a question lingering in the air: how much must we reveal to be truly free, and at what cost? The evening sky outside Emma's apartment had darkened to a deep indigo, speckled with the first stars of the night. The city's hum softened as the day's chaos gave way to quiet, but inside, Emma's mind was anything but calm. The revelations from earlier that day had stirred a storm within her, a storm that threatened to uproot everything she had carefully built. Liam's words echoed in her mind, "You're stronger than you know." But strength wasn't a simple thing. It was a fragile flame flickering in the wind of uncertainty. Emma felt torn between the desire to embrace this newfound connection and the fear that her past could shatter it all. A sudden knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. She wasn't expecting anyone. Heart pounding, she opened it cautiously to find a man standing there, a stranger with sharp eyes and an unsettling smile. "Emma," he asked, voice low and firm. "We need to talk." Confusion and alarm collided inside her. The man introduced himself as someone connected to her past, someone she had hoped never to see again. His presence brought a cold rush of dread. What he wanted was unclear, but Emma sensed the danger immediately. As he stepped inside, Emma's phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Liam: "Call me when you can. Something's come up." The timing felt like a cruel twist of fate. The stranger wasted no time, dropping cryptic hints about secrets Emma thought were buried. His words painted a picture of betrayal and unfinished business, a shadow from her past reaching into the present. Emma's heart raced. She had a choice: confront the ghosts that haunted her or protect herself by shutting the door and running. The room seemed to shrink around them as tension thickened the air. Emma's voice shook but held a steady edge. "Why are you here? What do you want from me now?" The man smiled coldly. "You owe a debt, Emma. And it's time to pay." Suddenly, her phone rang again, this time Liam's voice urgent on the line. "Emma, listen carefully. I just found out something big. You're in danger. We need to meet. Now." The crossroads lay before her: face the past head-on with Liam by her side or retreat into silence and isolation. The stakes had never been higher, and every decision carried consequences that rippled far beyond the moment. Emma's breath caught as the weight of choice settled over her. She realized that the path forward wasn't just about survival, it was about claiming her future on her own terms, no matter the cost. As the night deepened, Emma took a step toward Liam's voice, toward truth and the unknown. The chapter ended on a knife's edge, poised between fear and hope, between old wounds and new beginnings. The night was heavy with tension as Emma rushed through the quiet streets to meet Liam. The city's lights flickered like distant promises, but inside, her heart throbbed with uncertainty. Every step felt weighted by the past's shadows and the future's fragile hopes. When they finally met in a secluded cafe, Liam's eyes held a fierce determination. "Emma, I uncovered everything, the lies, the threats. That man who showed up. He's connected to a secret that could ruin us both if we don't act fast." Emma listened, breath shallow, as Liam laid out the tangled web of deceit. A powerful figure from her past was trying to manipulate her, to leverage secrets for control. But Liam had a plan, one that required courage, trust, and a leap of faith. They spent hours strategizing, piecing together evidence, and preparing for confrontation. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt not alone but part of a team. A partnership forged in trust and shared purpose. The next day, armed with proof and resolve, they faced the threat head-on. The confrontation was tense, words sharp as knives, but Emma stood firm, no longer the frightened woman of before. Her voice was steady, her spirit unbreakable. In the aftermath, the dangerous figure was exposed and held accountable. The burden that had weighed on Emma's shoulders began to lift, replaced by a new sense of freedom and clarity. As the dust settled, Emma and Liam found themselves standing at a different crossroads, not one fraught with fear, but one bright with possibility. They looked at each other, the unspoken feelings finally finding their voice. "Whatever comes next," Liam said softly, "we face it together." Emma smiled, hope shining in her eyes. The journey had been painful, filled with shadows and uncertainty, but it had also led her here, to strength, love, and a future reclaimed. The city outside continued its endless rhythm, but inside Emma, a new chapter was just beginning. One of courage, trust, and the promise of better days. The story closed not with an end, but with a beginning, a testament to resilience and the power of connection.